Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Fantasy Roundup here on bet.nola.com. I'm Zach Ewing, but you were all here to see Spencer the Guru. I'm glad I pointed in the right direction. I wasn't sure there for a second. He is here to help you out. We're going to recap week 3 in fantasy football. We're going to preview, most importantly, week 4. We're going to talk about waiver wire. It is a big week for waiver wire, Spencer. We're going to talk about who you can drop, which is always a difficult question. We'll talk a little DFS, and we will get all into it. We'll take your questions and your comments. First things first, if you're on our Bayou Bets YouTube page, give us a like, give us a subscribe, help us out. And if you're not on our Bayou Bets YouTube page, check it out, baby. Check it out and give us that like and that subscribe, and that way you will be on for all of our videos, all of our live videos. Every time Jim Derry goes live with Datitude, every time we have Bayou Bets, every time we have Fantasy Roundup, you'll get that notification, and you can be with us every step of the way. We are brought to you, as always, by the Caesars Sportsbook. Get your first bet risk-free up to $1,250 through our special promo code NOLAFULL, or you can just go to NOLA.com/Caesars, automatically load it up for you. So let's dig into some fantasy football, Spencer. Week 3, we talked the first 2 weeks. It was like, okay, Josh Allen did well, Justin Jefferson did well, Austin Eckler did well. Well, of course they freaking did well, okay? Of course they did. Week 3 is where some of that chaos hit the fan and spun all over the room. So we got to figure this out.
Yeah, for sure. I wrote up that little thing about the 5 easy facts. Just unbelievable. Khalil Herbert, the running back. Mac Hollins, the same amount of targets as Devontae Adams, but 15 more fantasy points. So it's on the Raiders. How does that happen? It's just such a crazy, unpredictable deal, but we try our best to get it right.
Well, and so really now the trouble is finding out which one of those performances are for real and which ones weren't, and which ones are just temporary because of injury, and which ones may help you all the way into the fantasy playoffs. So first, let's take a look at what happened. Our top scoring quarterbacks in week 3 by nearly 12 whole points. It was Lamar Jackson. Just a ridiculously dominant performance. If you had Lamar, you were already so far ahead of the game, like over your opponent, whatever quarterback he or she happened to have, that you had a huge advantage. This was the one area where we didn't see anybody crazy pop off.
Right. Yeah, Trevor Lawrence, a little surprising, but I've been high on Trevor Lawrence. If you're listening, Jim, Trevor Lawrence is legit, damn it. He's showing what he's made of, and yeah, he's killing it, man. 25 fantasy points. But yeah, all the other ones, the usual suspects.
Yeah, and nice to see Joe Burrow have a nice week after he had struggled a couple of weeks. I don't think there's any panic if anybody's owning Joe Burrow at this point. That's probably not what's wrong with your team if you have Joe Burrow and you're losing. So you'll be okay there. It's Poppy says who dat. Well,
sir.
Who dat, but not if you have Saints on your fantasy team. You probably didn't. Well, Chris Olave.
Yeah, Olave's been a fantasy stud, man. He has another one. It's crazy that Jameis has thrown 5 picks the last 2 weeks, yet Chris Olave's not been hurt by it one bit. I believe he's had like 26 targets in that span.
And a lot of them have been down the field, and that makes me think, and we rehashed this yesterday on Bayou Bets, but like that's what makes me think Jameis injury, I'm not saying it's not bothering at all. I don't think that's the problem. He can make the throws. We've seen him make the throws. He's just got to do it more consistently. The scheme maybe needs some improvement, but without digressing too far on that, let's talk about the running backs. This is where things got kind of haywire. Derrick Henry, the one name out there that we hadn't seen the first 2 weeks that we expect to see, Saquon Barkley also, but Khalil Herbert and Jamal Williams, Spencer, these are where the waiver wire is going to get hot this week.
Yeah, definitely. Williams was picked up in most leagues, but he was rostered in less than 50, so there's a chance he might be available. So if he is, obviously go target him with DeAndre Swift likely out. But the one that's available in over 75% of leagues is Khalil Herbert, and he's in a similar boat because David Montgomery's week to week. I wouldn't expect Montgomery to go this week. And honestly, though, I think Herbert should be the top priority over Williams because I feel like Williams is just going to be a placeholder until Swift comes back. Whereas Herbert, I think, could, if he does well, the Bears had already kind of hinted that they might go with Herbert over Montgomery at some point. And if Herbert does well, I think he takes the job, and Montgomery's going to be left as the backup.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those sort of difficult things, but Herbert catches some passes out of the backfield. David Montgomery obviously very good, but I think there's a role for Herbert in that offense. Either way, it's going to be a very run heavy offense as well. Moving on to wide receivers, Devonta Smith pops off for the Eagles, and then you talk about Mac Hollins, Russell Gage of the Bucks, Zay Jones. Like, this is, what are we doing here?
Yeah, the complete opposite of week one, where, or week one had the usual suspects all up there, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Devontae Adams, Stephon Diggs, Cooper Kupp, all the big dogs, where this week there were a lot of upset specials as far as guys that we were not expecting to do a whole lot that got up in the top of these ranks. And the only one that I feel is a must start out of these was Marquise Hollywood Brown. Outside of Hollywood, all these were big surprises. Russell Gage was somebody that the opportunity was king because the Bucks' top three receivers were out, so it made sense that he popped off. But Zay Jones and Mac Hollins, what the hell? That was just crazy. And the fact that they outscored, like, Zay Jones outscored Christian, who had been the steady number one there. Still had a pretty good week this week. Same with Adams. I mean, neither one were bust, but the fact that they were outscored by Hollins and Zay Jones of all people really surprised me.
Well, in season long, nobody started Mac Hollins. Yeah. Maybe you started Zay Jones if you have like a 6 wide receiver league or something, but other than that, nobody started Zay Jones. A lot of people screaming at their TVs on Sunday. But think about DFS, where Mac Hollins maybe out of in the GPPs where thousands and thousands of entry, maybe he's in like 1 or 2 of them. And if you correctly identify that, congratulations, because you probably won a lot of money on Sunday, because nobody else had that guy in their lineup. So that's the sort of thing when you're looking in those big DFS tournaments, that's what you've got to try to do. You can't just go say, Devontae Adams going to have a big week. Check that box. Hey, look, Derek Carr's priced down a little bit. I'm gonna stack Raiders and go Derek Carr and Devontae Adams. Well, here's the problem with that. Even if they pop off, 40% of the field had the same thought as you. You still need to beat that for, thousands and thousands of people had the same thought as you. But if you hit Mac Hollins with Derek Carr, you probably won some significant money on Sunday. So that's in DFS. That's what you're talking about.
Zig when they zag.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Marty says the Aints will bite the dust on Sunday. Well, I'll tell you what, if they bite the dust on Sunday, they will be very close to biting the dust for the season. I think it's getting down to the point where you got to start winning games. They lose, they're 1-3. To me, that makes the Seattle game the following week for sure a must win. You can't be 1-4. But This is not necessarily a Saints show. We'll keep on going with the fantasy in week 3. Mark Andrews, a huge week. And David Njoku, Spencer, where do you put David Njoku in your rest of season tight end rankings? How high does he go?
I think fairly high as far as I think he's now a top 12 tight end, being that we're getting to see that Jacoby Brissett in that offense is not totally garbage. I mean, the Browns' system, their offense under Stefanski is pretty good to where I think Njoku's, he's not going to put this kind of production up every week, but he's a sneaky back end starting tight end. Same thing with Tyler Conklin, who had another strong week this week. I like both of them moving forward because there's just not a whole lot of tight ends out there that get volume, and these guys appear to be getting enough to where they should be at least fringe top 10 options most weeks.
Absolutely. And that is the top scores for week 3. Just a couple more things to get through. Your star of the week, no surprise here.
Yeah, I had to go with Lamar Jackson because funny story, I had a league last night where I thought I was done because my opponent had the Giants defense, but luckily the Cowboys are just enough to make the Giants defense score hardly anything but the only reason I won, though, to go back to Lamar Jackson was because of Lamar. His big week allowed me to pull that league off. If it wasn't his insane amount of production through the air and on the ground, I wouldn't even have come close in that league. The only reason I had any sort of chance was because of his big day. So definitely had to shout him out here as the star of the week.
I mean, you look at that note there, 39.42 points, the most by 8.5 points of any player. And we talk about like,
Yep.
hey, don't draft quarterbacks in the top 5 rounds or anything like that because their scoring is so similar. Well, Lamar Jackson's kind of testing that theory because if he's going to run for 100 yards every week, which you can't expect him to do that, but even if he's going to run for 100 yards half the weeks, he's a game changer at quarterback because you can beat teams via the quarterback if you have Lamar Jackson. I have him in a league as well, and it's been a luxury so far.
No doubt about it. Yeah, he should continue as long as he's healthy. He should continue to put these kind of numbers up. He's in a contract year. He wants to get paid.
Yeah, no doubt about that. In fact, I almost didn't do a star of the week, I have to admit, because I did Lamar Jackson last week, and he was so much the fantasy football star of the week that it was like, well, what am I going to pick? Mac Hollins? Nobody played Mac Hollins. He's not anybody's star. So I pivoted a little bit. I went with Derrick Henry, who is on the same team as that I have with Lamar Jackson, and that team ended up being the top scoring team in the league this week. These numbers not spectacular by Derrick Henry standards: 20 carries, 85 yards, touchdown. Okay, that's solid, but from what we've come to expect from King Henry over the last few years, nothing special. But the thing that sticks out to me, Spencer, is the 5 catches for 58 yards. That's the second most receptions he's ever had. He had a game last year where he had 6, and it's the third most receiving yards he's ever had in a game. And the only other 2 times he had more than that were because he took a short pass to the house. He had one game in 2019 where he went like 75 yards on one reception, and another one I think in 2017 where he went 66 yards or something on one reception for a touchdown. And so this is the most sustained targets we've seen him get basically in his whole career. I think it was week 1 last year he had 6 catches for 55 yards in another game. If he is going to be targeted by that Titans offense, that changes the game for Derrick Henry a little bit because I don't think the running room will be there as much for them. I don't think they're as good of a team. They're not going to have as many opportunities to run. But if they're going to suddenly include King Henry in the passing game, Derrick Henry owners may end up being A-okay.
Right. Yeah, that was nice to see because in week 1 we saw the Dontrell Hilliard, the backup, get most of the receiving work. Where this week they didn't want to take King Henry off the field because basically when they do, that's just telegraphing the play. Like, hey, we're throwing. So they're going to be like, all right, Henry, you're going to have to learn to catch. Because if not, then they're just going to stop us every time because they're going to know what we're running. So Mike Vrabel and the staff getting creative. Like I know I get on Jim about the Titans not being very good because I don't think they're very good. They don't have much talent, but they are well coached and they always fight hard. So with that being said, yeah, King Henry is still very much relevant.
Yep. And sorry, I was just looking up here to go back to Lamar Jackson. He has in PPR format, in PPR for a quarterback, in standard format, let's say, 102.26 points so far through 3 weeks. So he's averaging well over 30 points a game. The next closest quarterback, Josh Allen, at 87.9 points. So he's been outscored by 15 points by Lamar Jackson. Then you get Jalen Hurts at 85, and then it drops off to Patrick Mahomes at 69. So Lamar Jackson outscoring the number 4 quarterback over just 3 weeks by more than 30 points. That's 10 points a week over a solid number 1 quarterback. Yeah, he's been a cheat code so far.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, Jalen Hurts too has been really good. So they've still had some elite QBs out there, but none better than Lamar.
All right, Surya has a question for us. 0-3 with Herbie, Cook. I assume that's Herbert. Dalvin Cook, Najee Harris, Amon-Ra, Jamar Chase, Mark Andrews, and Aaron Jones. Who should I trade and for whom? That's tough because the roster looks stacked. So I sense your frustration there. Anybody there that you're selling, Spencer, or is this just a time to be patient?
I would say for the most part, be patient. The only one I'd maybe consider trading Amon-Ra because I feel like later on in the season when Jamison Williams returns, that could hurt him slightly. And his stock's so high right now that I'd think you could maybe get pretty good value for him. But outside of that, the rest of these are all proven studs, established players. Just be patient. They'll shake back.
Yeah, I mean the problem that you have, Surya, is, and this is why you're 0-3, is because a lot of these players aren't really performing well yet, and so you're not going to get the correct value for any of them right now. Herbert's
you won't be winless for long, bro. That team's loaded.
you're going to be selling low on any of those guys except for maybe Mark Andrews. So honestly, I know that's the one player that's been producing. If you get somebody who's I don't know who your backup tight end is, but if you get somebody who's real thirsty for a tight end and you can get a star, I mean, it has to be a star at one of the other positions. You think about it, but even then, who are you going to bench? So you got to think about that too. Who should I trade Amon-Ra for? I mean, you got to see what's out there. But maybe another sort of buy low candidate. That's always what you're looking to
Justin
do at this time of year.
Jefferson, people are getting frustrated with him.
Yeah, maybe you package Amon-Ra with one of those other guys, Najee Harris or something, and try to get Justin Jefferson, try to capitalize on another owner's frustration. And at this point, you're 0-3. Look, you roll the dice. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't, but it's the correct time to roll the dice. All right, Listener League, our Bayou Bets Listener League. Spencer, you and I both go to 2-1. How about Bucktown Rebel, though? Second highest score this week, now 3-0. WTF Bama goes to 3-0. We got a couple of guys who are rabbits out in front of the field right now.
I know, yeah, this league's been very kind of unbalanced so far where they've Bucktown and Bama have pulled away. But we all know it's a long season. We've got the extra week now, so it's 15 instead of 14 regular season weeks. So this is far from over. It's going to be a fun battle to see because we got a lot of 1 and 2s, and I have a feeling at least 1 or 2 of those guys are going to come up and snag a playoff spot.
I think now that we're 3-4 weeks into the season, we might start actually posting the standings and scores. I understand a little bit hard to read there, and then maybe talking about the matchup of the week or something like that. But that's where we're at so far. Bucktown and Bama are out in front of the field. Spencer and I are in the group at 2-1 chasing. So that'll be a lot of fun. And maybe Uncle Big Nick will finally get his stuff together. I don't know. 94
yeah,
points.
you'd be in off to a rough start.
Come on, man.
The Niners, he went all in with the Niners. It's not looking good for him.
Follow up from Syria's backups, TJ Hawkinson. So that's pretty solid. Andrews and Amon-Ra for Jefferson and someone else.
Yeah.
You try it. I honestly might trade those two just for Jefferson straight up if there's somebody you could drop. But yeah, sure, try to get somebody else in the deal to start with.
Yeah,
maybe a reserve type player.
Yeah, maybe like a backup running back or something because Najee and Dalvin are both injury prone.
Or if they have sort of a fringe tight end one who you could add to Hawkinson and then you could play matchups at tight end the rest of the season, that's a possibility as well. So you're trading high on Amon-Ra, you're buying low on Justin Jefferson. That's the kind of thing that we like to do. You're watching the Fantasy Roundup on bet.nola.com. Zach Ewing along with Spencer, the Guru Urquhart, still licking his wounds from the Saints game on Sunday, but hopeful they'll shake back in London on this Sunday against the Vikings. And let's see. See Surya again. Why not trade Jamar? Because you're not going to get value for Jamar right now.
Yeah, exactly. Jamar's going to do a lot
point.
better. Yeah,
Jamar will get better on his own.
Yes, yeah.
And you trade him now. They're going to look at his stats and say, well, he's not doing anything. I'll give you, hey, here's Mike Williams for him.
Yeah,
that's not a fair trade.
No.
and instead you wait 3 weeks and Jamar Chase. If you still want to trade him after he has a couple 100-yard games, now you're going to go get a Justin Jefferson type for him or somebody like that. So that's why we look to trade the guy who's playing well right now, who maybe we're not sure can keep it up, versus the guy we think will start playing better. Looking ahead to week 4, the waiver wire targets. We mentioned this in the running back section. Khalil Herbert. We don't have Jamal Williams listed simply because our threshold here is 30% owned or less. If Jamal Williams is out there, he's owned in about 50% of leagues. He's certainly a guy you want to target. But Spence, you said you prefer Herbert over Williams anyway.
Yeah, I do, because like I said earlier, I think he's going to end up taking the job from Montgomery. It's a new coaching staff over there. Matt Eberflus, he seems to really like Khalil Herbert, trusted him as the workhorse. So yeah, I would. If you're in a fab league, I'd blow all the fab on Khalil Herbert. If you have $100, I'd spend at least 80, maybe even the whole thing, because I feel like Herbert could be that much of a difference maker. You
don't think Monty gets his job back when he's back?
I mean, if it was still Matt Nagy, I'd say yeah. But with this new regime, I'm thinking if Herbert does really good, then the job's his. Because I don't feel like they don't really owe anything to Monty, and he's still on his rookie contract, or like it's not like they've got a bunch of money tied up in him. So, I mean, he's still talented. It's not a guarantee, but I feel good enough. I mean, if you have a chance to get an every down workhorse, you might as well spend your fab on it because there's not going to be many opportunities to do so. I mean, the fab
that's
money
true.
is, the
That's
fab
true.
money.
The one thing about David Montgomery, I disagree with you. I think he gets his job back. I think he's the more talented back. I like Khalil Herbert, but David Montgomery has been one of my favorites for several years. I will say, though, he's been fairly injury prone. So even if he does come back, there's no saying that in 3 weeks he doesn't go down with another minor injury or at some point go down for the season maybe. And so Herbert is a good guy to have on the bench with Montgomery already battling some injuries. Elsewhere here, Romeo Dobbs and Greg Dortch, who you mentioned last week, go pick him up and you had another good week. Now he's 7% owned instead of 2% owned, but still out there in a lot of leagues.
Yeah, the Dortch, man, they sleep on the Dortch. He's filling in for DeAndre Hopkins, Rondale Moore, and then Romeo Dobbs, of course, looking like the new number one in Green Bay with all the injuries to their receivers. So, yeah, a lot of receivers to be having. Sterling Shepard, season-ending injury. So there's been, not that many people are depending on him, but just an example of just how you can have a receiver and boom, and they're out for the year. So if you're in that situation, or if you just have a receiving core that's not really performing all that well, like Michael Thomas, who's banged up again. Glad I stayed away from Mike in fantasy because he's just can't seem to stay healthy. But yeah, if you're in that boat where you've got an injured player, then yeah, they've got options, and Dobbs and Dortch to me are the best ones right now.
Yeah, it's receiver is going to be a constant battle. And then finally, Tyler Conklin, if you're among the masses who are looking for a tight end.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I like Conklin because he's been seeing a lot of targets, and with targets usually equals production, and so keep getting those targets. You gotta respect that because not many tight ends see consistent target shares.
A couple of other questions from Syria. If you can get Justin Jefferson, plug him into the lineup that you've got. Stand pat, man, and watch the magic happen. And if it doesn't, you did everything you could. That's what you got a solid lineup. I would stick with it and just hope for the best. As far as a wide receiver,
maybe.
A wide receiver or a running back at the flex, that just depends.
Let's see. A wide receiver or is it
a running back?
Running back. Oh, I was talking about A-Rob, like Allen Robinson.
Oh.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess he means a receiver or running. I mean, most likely a receiver because the position's deeper. But if you have a stacked running back room, it's possible. Oh, yeah, and picking up Jamal Williams. Yeah, Jamal Williams would be a solid flex until DeAndre Swift comes back.
Nick asked Spencer, you play a lot of DFS?
I actually don't play it a whole lot because I'm in so many season-long leagues, but I look at it every week, of course, for our show, and then I kind of, I like to track the value, seeing the DK prices and stuff. So I'm gonna have to enter some tournaments. I might try one this week. Why not?
You gotta get you in there and make you the big bucks. Just don't leave us once you hit the big one. All right, and then little trash talk here from the listener league. Got more points than me, and I'm 0-3. Yeah. Listen, fantasy's tough sometimes.
The only 0-3 team. Yeah, we talked yesterday. He was kind of hot about that, but that's the way it goes.
Yeah, I'm 0-3 in another league where I got some points. So it happens. All right, waiver wire is one thing. Who do you pick up? The other question is always then you get the other screen. Okay, you got to drop somebody, and that's when it becomes right, I got to drop somebody. So yeah. Spencer, week 4, who's got to go?
Oh, yeah. Carson Wentz, man, you got to go, man. I can't believe I got suckered into thinking he could be a QB1. He came back to earth. He showed that he's just not consistent, man. There's a reason he's on his 3rd team in 3 years. And a couple of receivers here. Darnell Mooney, I'm just done with the Bears, man. They are just garbage as far as the passing game. And then Julio, never healthy. I can't. It's not worth a spot, man. He's going to miss more games than he plays. And then Hunter Henry, Mac Jones is out for a while. New England's offense is a dump. Get rid of him and any other New England players outside of Harris and Stevenson.
What about Jacoby Myers?
He's injured right now, and I'd honestly say he's got to go too because, I mean, with Mac Jones, he's solid, but with Brian Hoyer, can you really trust anybody there? I can't.
Yeah. So, and some of it, too, depends on who else you got If you have,
Yeah, and how deep the
if you,
league is.
yeah, if you have some fat to trim elsewhere before those guys, then maybe you save them. A Jacoby Myers or a Hunter Henry could become valuable again in a month. But if you can't afford to wait a month, if you're 0-3, I mean, look, there's no sense trying to wait around and say, well, what's my team going to look like in the playoffs if you're not going to make the playoffs? You got to make it first.
Yeah.
Speaking of DFS, Uncle Big Nick asked about that. Your DFS best buys for week 4.
Yeah, I hate to say it because I don't really like the guy. Matt Ryan this week, I think, should do pretty well. Has a cushy matchup against Tennessee, and just he's cheap. I mean, 5,600 on DraftKings. That's the kind of stuff you need to, like you said, Zach, get ahead of the pack. You know, a lot of people will be taking the trendy elite QBs, where if you can get a cheap option like Matt Ryan to go off, that could pay dividends. And then going with Herbert again as a good matchup this week against the Giants, who just got gashed last night by the Cowboys on the ground. And Tyler Lockett, man, Tyler Lockett has been sneaky good lately. Been seeing a ton of targets from what's been a more pass-friendly Seahawks offense than I was thinking. I mean, I thought they'd be ugly running the ball, but they've seen
Gino is throwing like 40 passes a week.
facts. Yeah, and a lot of that's going to Lockett. He's seen 11 targets each, I believe, the past 2 weeks, and I think they played Detroit this week, who's got a soft secondary.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't mind Gino in DFS either. If you want to pivot at quarterback, the guy keeps throwing passes. They're probably going to fall behind every week.
Yeah, it could be a stack. Yes, Gino Lockett. I mean, that's been a pretty fruitful stack the past couple of weeks.
My DFS, there you go, Geno Smith. Look, $5,400. I guarantee you, he's going to have more points than people higher than him. And I don't think, again, the other thing you're always looking for in DFS is leverage over the field, especially in big tournaments. You can't just go with the popular play at every position. One position maybe sure, but you can't do that at every spot because you'll never find a way to get ahead, even if they hit. You're just tied with a bunch of other guys, and then you have to hit every single position dead on. Elsewhere, I went with Tony Pollard of the Cowboys and also Peyton Hendershot, the tight end replacement for Dalton Schultz. That's a real pivot, but look at the money you could save, $2,500. If you want to spend up at other positions at wide receiver and running back, quarterback, you can go get Peyton Hendershot at tight end. He had some downfield targets, 20-plus yards downfield Monday night against the Giants. Cowboys get the Commanders. Their defense has been awful. I like Tony Pollard and Hendershot both. And just keep an eye, make sure Dalton Schultz is not coming back because I think there is a chance he comes back. And then at receiver, I went with Jerry Jeudy. Seems like he's become Russell Wilson's favorite. They came out of their shell just a little bit at the end of that Sunday night game. And they get the Raiders this week. That seems like a game where the Broncos are going to have to score some more points. And I think Wilson and Nathaniel Hackett are going to bring that offense out of its shell just a little bit more each week. And Jeudy seems to be the beneficiary there.
Yeah, I would think Jeudy should do better. It's just Sutton's been such a target hog. But yeah, they got to do better. I feel like the Raiders are kind of a soft matchup. The only 0-3 team, and a lot of that has to do with their defense. So yeah, Jeudy could be a pretty good value. And then yeah, Hendershot, if no Schultz, that's so cheap there, 2,500, to where it's like if you want to spend big at the other spots, then that could be a value.
Yep, absolutely. And as Uncle Big Nick mentions, like the Seahawks, look, it's still Pete Carroll. He's still going to be Pete Carroll.
Yeah,
it is surprising to see Geno throwing 44 passes in a week, but again, they can run a few plays. They can only run 63 plays, but if they're behind the whole game and 2/3 of those plays are passes, well, the passing game is still effective. So I certainly wouldn't play any Seahawks running backs, but I think in their pass game there's something there. Finally, here on Fantasy Roundup, as we get ready for Week 4, starting in just a couple days with the Bengals and the Dolphins, our Week 4 sleepers. Spencer, I feel like you cheated here, man.
Well, I mean, I couldn't put him on the waiver wire because of the 30% rule, so I felt like I had to put him here because Jamal Williams is he's the reason I say that he's a sleeper is because he's a guy that a lot of people see him and be like, should I start him? But to me, you gotta start him, assuming DeAndre Swift's out, to where it's like you don't want to sleep on him to where it's not. You don't want to sleep on him and bench him just because you're not familiar with him. Make sure he's in your lineup.
You're starting him. You're ranking him in the top 10 this week, the top 8 this week. I mean, how good would your other running backs have to be before you would bench Jamal Williams?
Yeah, I'd say at least top 12. I don't know about probably not top 8, maybe top 10 to 12. So unless you're in a really shallow league, then
Yeah,
then
if
you
he's
have
top
to
10 to
play
top
him.
12, should at least be your flex, even if you're stacked at running back. So I would think. My sleeper, Javonte Williams, again, we talked about that Bronco offense possibly coming out of its shell. But the other thing I look at is look at the Raiders defense, man. And Derrick Henry went for a career high, almost a career high in receiving yards. I mean, it wasn't just because he didn't pop the long one, but he was getting those targets. We saw the Cardinals do the same thing against the Raiders, and before that, we saw the Chargers do the same thing with Austin Eckler. So Javonte Williams is going to catch some passes this week. He's going to get you those PPR points. I know it's been a little bit slow going. I would stick with Javonte Williams.
Oh yeah, for sure, man, for sure. Yeah, man, you getting on me about cheating, Javonte Williams. I would hope people aren't ready to bench him yet, because yeah, he's definitely brighter days ahead for him and the Broncos.
Yeah. Well, hey, look, people get impatient. They're 0-3.
Yeah.
It's still only 3 weeks into what if the playoffs are weeks 15, 16, and 17, it's a 14-week season, not even a quarter of the way through it. So stay patient. Um, Spencer, any final thoughts as we recap week 3, go into week 4?
Yeah, just about trading. Trades are tempting. Obviously, if you can upgrade your team, do so. But man, I'm kind of in a dilemma as far as like, I mean, I already did the trades. I can't go back now. But last week I traded Dak Prescott. There's a super flex league where 14-man super flex league. So quarterback super scarce. Traded Dak Prescott straight up because my running backs are garbage in this league. Straight up for Javonte Williams. And I mean, yeah, I didn't have Dak this week, but the reason I'm scared now is because I had Carson Wentz as my super flex. Like, Wentz is pretty good, but man, he looks so bad to where like, man, I'm gonna be stuck with Wentz all year as my second QB. So unless Javonte really steps up, I'm gonna be kicking myself for doing that deal because I'm pretty sure Dak's gonna shake back and be better than Wentz. So really need Javonte to step up. The reason I did, though, I mean, my backfield in that league is a hot mess because I have Kelsey and a nice receiving core. So my top 2 backs are literally Josh Jacobs and Ramondre Stevenson. So
Wow.
Yeah,
Well, I
it was
will say
brutal.
this. Listen. I've said all summer Carson Wentz it shouldn't even be in the NFL, starting in the NFL for me. He can be a backup somewhere, but he's not an NFL starting level quarterback for me. But they are going to be behind more often than not, and so he's going to get those garbage time points for you. I don't hate Carson Wentz as a QB2 just for that reason. So he will throw passes and just get you some points in those fourth quarters. My final thought. I'm just going to let Uncle Big Nick say it. You're welcome, buddy. You're welcome. That's the Bayou Bets Listener League, and we'll be back with more on that and everything else to do with fantasy football next Tuesday at 2 o'clock. We'll also be back here on these same channels Thursday at 4 for Bayou Bets, previewing the weekend to come. I'll be joining the show live from London, and Spencer and Jim will be here as well. So for Spencer the Guru Urquhart and the rest of our crew here at Bayou Bets, this has been the Fantasy Roundup. I'm Zach Ewing. Thanks for being here, everybody.